Is that my cue?
Yes, Sandy, you can go ahead and start.
Okay, well, thank you and good morning. Welcome. I'm Sandy McDonald, Director of the Office of Economic and Small Business Development. And this is the beginning of our season. And I have to pause. Hey, I don't know if you're excited to see me when we do this each year, or when we do this each year, that means you recognize we're preparing for hurricane season. Hopefully it's a little bit of both. But today is our business resiliency webinar. Excuse me. And we're going to have several guests, several leading experts share information with us to make sure that you, as a part of the public, even though I also know I got some of my business folks on here, but you as a part of the public, you as a part of Broward County, you as a part of the business community, who's ever here today, understand that we're always talking about stay ready, not necessarily get ready, but stay ready. The Office of Economic and Small Business Development, we're here because of our Broward County Board of County Commissioners. And they support all the things that we do. We are a part of that economic opportunity that's listed there on your screen. But far more than that, we're the group who also is responsible that you're here today about the emergency support function, ESF 18. Next slide. So again, on behalf of the county administrator, Monica Sapero, who ushers in everything that we do as an office, as supported by what she's given through the Broward County Board of County Commissioner. She's also excited to make sure that we're sharing this information, we're sharing it timely, and more importantly, she's extremely supportive of what we do for our business community, for our entrepreneurs, and to grow the tax base by making sure small businesses participate in everything we do. And that's inclusive of hurricane season. There are procurement opportunities, business opportunities, though we're going to be talking about the aspect of understanding what to do. I don't want you to miss out on the fact that procurement does happen as a part of hurricane season. Next slide. Discussion topics for today: emergency operation, resiliency, disaster response, business continuity, lessons learned, resources for local businesses. So as a part of housekeeping, there is a Q&A. So please be sure to put your questions in the Q&A. But there is a chat. So scream and shout out. Let us know who you are, where you're from, whether you're a resident, whether you're a business, whether you're an organization. Please use the chat to make sure we know who you are and that you're here. Next slide. So I get to introduce you to who I know to be a true expert, and her expertise expands every time we talk about resiliency and more. So Dr. Jennifer Jurado, thank you for joining us again, as you always do. And you will lead us off today on behalf of the Resilient Environment Department. Dr. Jurado, the floor is yours.
Great, Sandy. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate and the introduction. Just making sure you can hear me all right. Yes, great. And I apologize to everyone. I was having an IT issue, so I'm communicating with my phone, and hopefully that'll work well through the presentation. So next slide, please. As shared, I'll be talking about resilience initiatives in the county, and especially as they relate to our preparations for what are combined seasons that overlay in the summer. Next slide, please. So just setting the stage, when we think about extreme weather, and yes, it's inclusive of the hurricane season, there are conditions just overlaying all of that that adds to the severity of what we need to plan for. That comes in the form of our rising sea level, which augments storm surge, rainfall intensification, which we're seeing impact our community, This contributes to enhanced flooding, which we know can result in losses of vehicles, traffic disruption, impacts to our assets, our businesses, our homes, and it's all interconnected. The potential for damage is notable, as well as safety, which we'll be talking about in the presentation. And while a lot of our focus has been on flood in the past, increasingly we know that heat is an added factor or additive in terms of these risks, and both heat and flood can contribute to the disruptions, the economic implications, and the overall, quality of life considerations that impact our community. So our effort is get up and to advance our planning to minimize these impacts and navigate well through these disruptions that can occur. Next slide, please. We have seen this increase in conditions that do relate to both flood and heat. I expect everybody is well familiar with our April 23 event where we had extreme flooding. We show here, some of those impacts. The graphic on the bottom left is revealing that while we know as a whole our average rainfall will continue to be around 6 inches a year, the fact is that we see these extreme conditions. You can see in the last, 7 or 8 years, we've got a number of years with sizable exceedances in terms of the overall rainfall delivery. And that has been combined with what we know to be locally an increase in extreme heat. And this graphic on the top right shows what happened in terms of the total number of heat hours that were experienced in 2023. And so one can say this is generally relevant to the community, but it's also relevant to our employees. Where are they working? Where are they coming from? How does it affect their ability to work in the field? What if you lose power at the office or in your place of business? What are the heat implications? And so there's all this kind of contextualization in terms of where we live, where we operate, and where we need to provide services as part of our community, and thinking about these things as they interplay. Next slide, please. Sorry for the delay that's occurring. I don't know if the slide has advanced. I'm waiting for it to advance.
Bear with us
Sandy,
a moment, please.
yeah.
Yeah, give us a second, guys. Sorry about that.
Let's move forward.
All right, and so just this next slide is an example of, here we see our annual rainfall countywide in the county, which is the dark blue. So this is the average annual rainfall for each of, spatially distributed, but those shaded areas in the bottom of the graphs, these are discrete rainfall events. So in a single day or 2 days, how much of our annual rainfall volume fell in these very narrow periods of time? And of course, that, as we have seen, can and does result in extensive flooding. And part of the conversation today is simply having a greater awareness about the importance of paying attention to these flood alerts. I think oftentimes we might think that, how severe can it be? Well, we are seeing increasingly these are quite severe events, and it isn't just a matter of hunkering down in time for that few moment, for those few moments, but it may be more about, where do I need to be in an hour, and where does my team need to be, because this could be an event that could last 5-6 hours. What does it mean if I have stranded assets out in the field, and really being cognizant of the threat that these flash flood events can carry. And if we look at our major events over the last 32 years, we've seen that most of these are falling in the last 10 years. Some of these are falling in the last 5, and 5 of them are falling in the last couple of years. So we know that this is a trend that's continuing, and it really underscores the importance of paying attention to these extreme rainfall warnings. And as I said, thinking about where you are, where you need to be, where are your assets, and getting prepared for that. Next slide, please. This is, again, kind of on the heat conversation, seeing this ramp up in the total number of hours exceeding 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Please know that we have adjusted the thresholds and working with the National Weather Service, where we have heat advisories now being set at 105 and heat warnings at 108 degrees. And so this is, again, about thinking about employees. We have circumstances, people coming to heat where they're working in public works. You could have employees that are out in the field. Really being aware of what it takes to prepare a team to work under these conditions, and they're not lessening, they're not going away, and we need to be increasingly conscious about what it means to function under these conditions, and which we'll talk more about. Next slide, please. I'm going to try to move quickly because I know we've had a couple of delays. This graphic is just showing this is temperatures in Fort Lauderdale. The red line is our average highs. The red dots are the extreme high records, and the white dots are the temperatures for 2024. So you can see it is hot and hotter. We're exceeding record-breaking heat. Increasingly, we know every year is hotter than the last year. We combine it with our humidity. We have to take heat incredibly seriously, and especially, if we're dealing with a major storm and there's power outages and so forth, thinking about what it means to operate under those conditions and how do you keep cool and what does it mean for our infrastructure and all of these other things, but really trying to raise the awareness that we need to be thinking about heat alongside wind, alongside flood. Next slide, please. These are the temperature distributions in Broward County. Think about where you live, where your employees live, where you work, where are you doing business. The areas that are darkest red are the hottest in our county. We have extreme urban heat islands where temperatures can be as much as 14 degrees warmer than adjacent areas. And this is going to be hot, areas with a lot of concrete. You can see the graphic on the right, temperatures ramping up. They're warmest in the last several decades. I won't cover the one on the top right, but the important thing is pay attention to where you work and live. And there can be areas of increased exposure for where you are and where your team may be in the field. Next slide, please. We also know that the extreme heat is resulting in increased emergency room visits and medical interventions, especially in these urban heat islands. So once more, taking this information seriously. It's not just inconvenient. Heat stroke is real. Heat stress is real, and preparing for that with additional cooling, shade, breaks for anybody who's operating in these conditions, and being aware of your colleagues. And oftentimes it is about a team member recognizing that another team member isn't really doing well. Next slide, please. We have now taken an organized approach to how can we jointly address the combined pressures of flood and heat in the community. We just recently finalized at the beginning of this year a countywide resilience plan. I'm going to touch on it very quickly. Next slide, please. It takes into account, as I said, the combined issues of flood and heat. We've mapped areas of increased flood risk. You have a link in the chat to the a viewer that is going to allow you to look at where your assets are relative to flood risk under various threats. And it's important to understand the potential levels of flooding. The April 12th event revealed that this modeling well predicted the extent of very severe flooding that can occur. We modeled the 5 feet flooding at the airport, 3 feet in communities. These might seem like excessive numbers, but under the right conditions, this level of flooding can occur. And so being aware of our own individual flooding, it may be time to think about, are there some flood devices that I might need to deploy on my property? Do I need to have conversations about some drainage improvements? If I'm looking at where I need to deploy assets, again, is this an area of enhanced flood risk? What does it mean getting from point A to B? This allows you to familiarize yourself with the landscape more acutely, accounting for these events. Next slide, please. I'm going to skip this. Next slide. Next slide. I'm just going to move through this. So what we know is that the sectors impacted, the greatest impacted, tend to be the service areas and real estate. And when we look at these disruptions, they translate to significant economic losses. We know that that includes our small businesses, which are the majority of operations in our county. We looked at the economic outcomes with adaptation and without adaptation. And we know that when it comes to service disruptions, insurance coverage, protection property, it's going to be really critical that we're investing in these flood risk reductions. Next slide. I mean, there are costs, but there are massive returns on investments that come in the billions. We're working on putting these interventions in place. A lot of this is green infrastructure and storing water on properties in order to help create areas of storage that keep it out of buildings. I would urge that for those who are looking at improvements for dealing with water management on your properties, if you're looking at where might I look at investments, take into account these flood risks, the types of strategies that are contemplated, and the level of investment that may be needed on your own property. We estimate about 2/3 of what will be invested is going to come from personal property investments, enhancements that happen in the private sector as part of redevelopment and site specific improvements. Next slide, please. And we're planning for the 2 and 3 foot sea level rise. This is the type of infrastructure, operations, water storage devices that can be put underneath parking lots if you're dealing with, flooding and needing to create storage. All together, trying to create storage in the environment. Next slide, to help reduce flood elevations. I know we want to move really quickly now. You will be able to access this information in a web portal. Go to the link in the chat if you're interested in querying for very specific addresses. Next slide. You'll be able to see within that portal an opportunity to compare flood conditions under different scenarios. You'll be able to compare with and without adaptation improvements and get a sense of where we have latent flood risk. There will always be latent flood risk in the community. The important thing is understanding how we can mitigate and minimize the amount of disruptions. Next slide, please. And this is, demonstrative that these investments are worthwhile. We would acknowledge that the critical opportunities that come as we prepare for this season, understanding the risk, being able to communicate with the team about the hazards as they're being reported, how do we prepare, having those strategies in place, evaluating personal flood risk where you live and work, thinking strategically about how that can be navigated. If you're looking at, like if you're working in roofing or you're, food distribution, any teams in the field, where do I need to have resources when I'm operating under these conditions? What does it mean to be able to have, to deploy with those types of disruptions in place, thinking about how we identify and document heat challenges in the community when we're preparing for our team, and especially thinking about moving forward, what might these conditions, as they happen more repeatedly and prolonged periods of time, how can that affect the way I think about my business, my operations, my team? It may mean that you're keeping more snacks available in the office if people are going to potentially be stranded for a bit, or you need them to be able to operate for extended hours without leaving the office. Just some basic provisional things that we think about as the team, as we see that these events can happen outside of a tropical storm. They can be happening throughout the season. Next slide, please. I think I've already talked about that. Next slide. Okay, and so as you get into any of those materials, you get onto the website, you look at the viewer. If you have any questions, if you're looking for resources to help prepare a team, please reach out. Glad to also make separate presentations to smaller audiences if you'd like to have the information shared in a more personalized manner. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you so very much.
Dr. Jurado, thank you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for always coming through with that information. And just reminding you guys, this is being recorded because it is our plan to make sure that it gets out on our website, it gets out on our YouTube, and to make sure our community relations outreach division can continuously push this, do links with social media. This information is so valuable. We want you, as well as others, to always be able to come back to it. So once again, thank you, Dr. Jurado. So I'm going to begin to walk you through the org chart, the process, us understanding who we are as an office and our role in this entire Broward Emergency Response Team, which we call BERT. Next slide. So this would be the org chart that explains who we are and what we do when it comes to the Broward Emergency Response Team. Again, you'll be able to see this on our website. You'll be able to see, again, I'm saying it about 1,000 times a day. That's an exaggeration. How about 50? That we want this where you can share it and pass it with others. Again, that's why it's being recorded. And from our office perspective, we are ESF 18. Next slide. And this is us, business and industry. From the operations section chief to the infrastructure branch to the ESF 18 supervisor, which I am, working with the hotel and hospitality, as well as the business response and recovery. We're there as a part of the bigger picture to make sure that as we're coming out of any catastrophe, any incident, we're helping the businesses to recover. The sooner they can recover, the sooner we begin to remove ourselves from some of the necessary conditions and some of the necessary requirements of meeting needs that no longer needs to be met. But even though we're part of the coming out after the all clear, is so much similar to this workshop that has to be done on the front end. So many connections, so many contacts, so much of dissemination of information, so much of preparedness. So again, speaking to the public or speaking to the business community, we want to make sure we're engaging early. We want to safely come through whatever incident. And then on behalf of ESF 18, we want to help to recover and bring our community back, our businesses back sooner. Next slide. So this is actually the definition of the emergency support function, ESF 18, and is primarily about the coordination of the preparation response and the recovery processes for business and industry. You heard that part earlier. It's definitely about the preparation and the coordination for what will be the recovery process for business and industry. Next slide. liaison with county supermarket chains, gas station, home improvements. So we try to make sure for the main organization, the main businesses, where the residents as well as the businesses especially are going to need access to information, that we coordinate that all on the front end. And we want to assure that at the end of the day, even when it comes to the damage assessment, what we get from the state, and we do the survey, that we have some understanding of what our needs are, so we can eventually help to prepare our folks for those who might need to submit an application for some financial support. Next slide. Coordinate with all of our partners. We have several partners that we're going to be listening to later today. Again, mentioning that damage assessment survey. Guys, that's one of the key things that we have to do and try to do timely, is to get that damage assessment survey completed so that an overall determination can be made of what's needed, so that the state can then do whatever declarations they need to do. And if it's going to be the aspect of the funding, so then the funding can also go in place so those in need can begin to do their application. So that would be my buzz for my public, but specifically for my business community. Respond to the damage assessment survey. Next slide. Ensure the businesses in the industry have access to timely information, and Broward County will coordinate countywide virtual business recovery. These are other ways that we can aid businesses who still need assistance. And we also want to make sure that no matter what happens, pre and post disaster, there's information that can be disseminated timely. So that's why we try to gather as many phone numbers as we can, direct contacts as we can, make sure our website and our information is up and is clear and is accurate. So again, there's so much as right now, May 21st, that go into preparing so that hopefully is smooth and is seamless, may not be seamless, but smooth and seamless, and getting all of our information available to the business community. Next slide. Business recovery centers. So this is the idea that we want to make sure that, if possible, we have locations. Now, we've been doing it the last few years virtual, but if possible, we have locations where, once we have the all clear, we have locations where businesses can go, where we're going to have generators, where there's going to be power, where an individual can at least start having some degree of business activity back. We understand that some areas might not have that. That's why, in addition to doing it virtual, when we do it with live facilities, we locate facilities across the county that at the end of the day could be those recovery centers for us. Next slide. The objectives of the recovery center: to provide disaster relief information and referral assistance, assess the needs of small businesses, work with municipal partners, and to provide assistance to municipalities. Again, in preparation, we're speaking to our cities. We're speaking to our county. We're speaking to our partners. We're trying to make sure that folks are aware of what the process would be if we had to establish a business recovery center, or even when doing a business recovery center virtual. We just want to make sure everyone knows where that information can be found. So prior to, let's say, the end of June, the devil in the details about the virtual business recovery centers and any other supports that you'll find from ESF 18, that will be on our website. Next slide. So this is more information, as I just described, about the virtual. And it's just the idea of making sure that, hey guys, if you got access to your laptop and you got some power or you got some internet, you will be able to communicate with us. We'll be able to communicate with you, and we'll be able to tell you how and what to look out for, especially from that damage assessment survey, including the application when someone might need to be getting the SBDC loan that is going to be made available via the SBA. Next slide. And that's our communication, our contact and information for this office where we are located. Okay, and next slide. And now we're going to have from the Broward County Office of Emergency Management, Carolina. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Gonzalez. So the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carolina Gonzalez from the Office of Emergency Management, And I'm going to be going over some key points about business continuity and why it matters. If you go to the next slide, please. Oh, the next slide. Thank you. So basically, why business continuity matters. Emergency can happen without warning, and small businesses have less room for downtime. A plan increases your chance of survival and recovery. Emergencies, whether it's a hurricane, a cyber attack, or a water line break, don't wait until we're ready. And for small businesses, even a small disruptions have serious financial consequences. Unlike larger companies, you may not have a legal team, extra staff, or a deep reserve of cash. And that's why a business continuity plan is critical. It helps you recover faster, communicate better with your team and customers, and keep your business running when things go wrong. Next slide. Your plan to keep going when things go wrong. That's what business continuity is. It focuses on essential functions, staff communication, and resources. It doesn't have to be long, and it doesn't have to be real, basically. Business continuity is not about creating a huge, overwhelming document. It's about putting together a simple, usable plan to get through the crisis. What are your must-dos for the operation? Who needs to do what? How do you keep in touch with your team or your customers? What supplies, data, or tools do you rely on daily? Writing this down gives you a huge advantage when under pressure. Next slide. What could go wrong? So building damages, flood, the loss of power, IT or cyber attack, staff unable to work, or major supplier delays. There are so many things that can disrupt your operations, and they're not always big disasters. It could be a power outage during peak hours, or your payment system going down. A delivery delay from your supplier, that could mean you can't serve your customers at the moment. And if key staff are sick or quit unexpectedly, who is there for your backup? A good plan helps you keep moving even when things don't go according to plan. Next slide. We're going to be watching a quick little video that introduces the basics of business continuity and why it's so important.
Wait. Thanks. Running late? Yeah, traffic was rough this morning. Crisis averted. No crisis, just a little traffic. But what if there had been a lot of traffic? Everyone needs a backup plan. Just like every company needs a business continuity plan. What just happened? Could be a blackout. Completely unpredictable. Where did you get that? It's important to start your business continuity planning early. How long can you operate without core systems and processes? What if your entire network went down? No communications means no sales and lost customers. Why isn't this thing working? Finally. Recovery's good, but 75% of companies without continuity plans fail within 3 years. Who's in charge during a disaster? Like a fire? Identifying teams and assigning tasks is essential. Everyone needs to know their responsibilities. What's going on? It could be a hurricane. Hurricane? Weather can badly damage your assets. Planning better prepares your company to recover from any disruption. Why aren't you getting wet? Not everyone's under the same umbrella. It's important to test, update, and exercise your preparedness measures. So, can we share? No. A business continuity plan for one company won't fit another. That's why it's important for everyone to develop their own plans. Why are you wearing a mask? Don't forget to plan for the human element. Contingency planning should go beyond natural disasters. Plan for man-made threats, too. Oh, come on. Great. Hey, let me out. Will your continuity plan be in place when it matters most?
Next slide. So now that we saw what could go wrong, we're going to go over the 4 basic steps to create your own plan. First, you would identify what's essential. Identifying what's essential makes a plan for keeping up with those things that need to be running. You train your staff and update it at least once a year. These are the foundations for any good plan. First, figure out what operations you simply can't afford to pause. Then decide how you will keep them going. Maybe it's a backup supplier, remote work, or manual processes. Make sure your team is trained and knows what to do. And remember, plans need maintenance. Update your plans at least every year or when your business needs change. Next slide. What to think through: employees, customers, space, equipment, inventory, cash flow, vendors, and communication. Think about what your business needs from every angle, not just your storefront or your website. Who are your employees and what roles are they playing essentially during a crisis? How will you stay in contact with your customers if your system is down? Do you have a backup vendor or even alternate locations you can operate from temporarily? What does your cash flow look like if you have to shut down for a few days? Next slide. Smart and simple strategies. Back up important documents to the cloud. Store paper files in waterproof bins, cross-train employees, and have a printed contact list. Know your insurance and keep records. These are all simple wins that can save a major headache later. Don't rely just on one employee to know everything, and make sure your roles are cross-trained. Store important documents online and offline, and make sure you have access to your customer and supplier information, even if you're not at your physical business location. And review your insurance. Know what actually is covered before something happens. Next slide. Communicating during crisis. How will you reach your team? How do you update customers? And how do you have access to contacts outside of your email? Communication is often one of the few things that breaks down. What's your plan if email or phones are out? Do you have a group text, a WhatsApp, or a backup contact method for your team? Do your customers know where to find updates? Maybe it's your website or social media, and your vendor contact list details. Where are they saved? Can you access them even if your internet is down? These are all things to keep in mind. Next slide. Testing and practicing. Talk through the scenarios. Try a short drill with your team. Learn what's missing before it matters. Testing your plan helps you catch issues before they become real problems. Try a tabletop exercise. Walk through a scenario with your team, like a power outage or a delivery delay. What worked, what didn't work, and what was unclear. Even a 10-minute discussion can make your team more confident and better prepared. Next slide. Personal preparedness helps businesses. Your family and your employees should have their own plans. It's hard to run a business if you're worried about your home. Encourage basic readiness at home and at work. You can't leave your business if you're worried about your family. Something goes wrong for your team, and you need to know that your families are safe and are safe in order for you to stay focused at work. Encourage your staff to have personal emergency plans. That kind of peace of mind contributes directly to your business's ability to recover. Next slide. There are a few free tools and support that I can share with you guys. So FEMA's Ready Business Program and the SBA's Business Continuity Guide, as well as ready.gov/businesses. There are so many free resources available. The SBA and FEMA offer step-by-step guidance. And on ready.gov, there's a checklist and templates that can be downloaded and customized. And you don't need to start from scratch. That's the most important part. Use what's out there already and let us help you adapt it to your business. If there's anything that we can do, please feel free to reach out. Next slide. Just some final thoughts and a thank you. Continuity protects your people, your income, and your peace of mind. Take a small step. They all add up, and we're here to support you. Even if it's just thinking about continuity today puts you ahead of many businesses. You don't need to create a full plan overnight. Start with one action, back up your contacts, write down key roles, talk to your staff, and remember you're not alone. We're here to help with whatever you can. My information is on the website, on the webinar chat. If there's anything that our office can do for you, we'd be so happy to assist. Thank you so much.
Ms. Gonzalez, thank you, and thanks for sharing that information. And guys, so much was shared, so much is important. I saw in the chat, not the Q&A, but I saw in the chat, someone's asking about, will this be replayed? It is going to be posted on our website. But one of the things I just want to reemphasize that Ms. Gonzalez just shared, test and practice. Don't create your continuity plan and set it on the shelf. Make sure you test and practice. And also another key point, let's not forget about taking care of family. You can't handle your business side if you're not taking care of your family side, or as mentioned, you can't really handle your business side if you're worried about your family side. So definitely make sure your family and individuals in the family are also taking a look at what they need to take a look at. So next up, we are going to be bringing Kimberley Perry, Florida Commerce Emergency Coordinator, and this is to talk about the transition, or is staff telling me something different? I see English is on the screen. Which way am I going?
So Kimberly is not here at the moment, so we're gonna skip to Baldwyn.
Okay, so on behalf of Florida Power and Light Company, Senior External Affairs Manager, Baldwyn English. Good morning, Mr. English. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you for having me, and I've appreciated the discussion so far. It's been very informative and really affirming of some of the things that we're doing at FPL. So I want to be able to share that with you and the audience today. Again, you see my name, Baldwyn English, Senior External Affairs Manager with FPL here in Broward County. Next slide, please. And, next slide as well. Thank you. Just a little bit of background. Certainly, FPL is, we cover about half the state. We have approximately 6 million customers. And you see some of the data points there in terms of the breadth of what we are charged to do in making sure that we are providing a reliable service to all of our customers, residential customers, businesses large and small. Next slide. And, this goes back to the point we just heard. We engage in year-round preparations when it comes to storm, being prepared for storm season, hurricane season. Just a week or two weeks ago, we finished our annual storm drill, and this is an opportunity for us to simulate an actual storm during the course of a week. So we have morning and afternoon check-in calls. We are testing our satellite phones. We're acting as if, we have meteorologists on staff, and we have images of hurricanes coming across, through the Gulf or coming straight from the Atlantic. And we really model as if a storm is happening, and we operate that week as if we're in the middle of a storm. So that is something that allows us to be mindful of, making sure our tech is working, making sure our processes are working. So we do it every year. Certainly, we encourage all of the businesses and even our homes, right, to have a plan and to make sure that our plan works. Next slide, please. And this just shows you a little bit of a highlight. Last year, we had 3 major storms that hit us, Hurricane Helene and Milton being categories 4 and 3 respectively. Next slide, you'll see that Hurricane Helene, you see the impact there. We had just under 700,000 FPL customers that were impacted. And that this is on the as you see there in the panhandle. The next slide shows you Hurricane Milton, that it kind of cut across, and we had about 2 million customers impacted by that storm. Fortunately, here in South Florida, as we go to the next slide, we have been able to avoid the majority of these recent storms. I think last year we may have had some tornadoes. I know that touched down in Broward and Palm Beach County, but we've been spared the worst of it. So we're grateful for that, but certainly we need to plan for what will inevitably be some type of storm impact sometime in the future. As part of our restoration last year, we are able to get, in today's time period, we're able to get 50% of our customers back up online within about 24 hours. And you see within 3 to 5 days, we're able to get the majority of those customers impacted back online. And if you've been around South Florida for a long time, you know that that was not the case necessarily in 92 when Hurricane Andrew came. It was not the case necessarily in the 2004, 2005 hurricane seasons, where we began to really invest in hardening and being prepared for these storms that are having greater and greater impact. So the next slide, please. So to that extent, we have literally invested billions of dollars into upgrading our transmission structures. We've undergrounded lines, and we've undergrounded approximately 60. Let me back that up. We've upgraded the feeders of approximately 60% of the feeder lines, I believe, here in Broward County. We've certainly deployed smart grid technology that helps us to avoid unnecessary outages. So, the millions or billions of dollars that we have invested into the grid throughout our state, but certainly here in Broward County, has helped us achieve better reliability. I think the next slide shows that. Before we get there, even last year, when we do not have a storm that impacts us here in South Florida, or even if we do have storms that impact us throughout the state, we certainly, on the next slide, we certainly share our resources with other states. So just like how we have thousands of people come in and help us, we do the same thing. We did that a couple of times last year with the states that you see there as well. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we've upgraded approximately 82% of our main power lines. 96% of our transmission structures are now steel or concrete. And certainly we go through a process of trying to clear vegetation as much as possible annually through a regularly scheduled program. And all of this goes to make our service more reliable today than it was even just a few years ago. Next slide. And I mentioned the 2004-2005 hurricane season. That's when we really started investing and really got the buy-in from our regulators as well as the general public, saying, hey, we need to do this. We need to get rid of the wooden poles, get the concrete poles underground as much as possible. Our goal is to pretty much have substantially undergrounded substantially all of our feeder lines or our lateral lines, the lines behind the house that are closest to your home, closest to your business by 2045. So hopefully in the next 20 years, we'll get that done substantially. And we're well on the way to doing that. Next slide. I believe the next slide will show, I have my labs here. All right. That investment that we've made can actually also includes the deployment of smart meters. They've been around for at least 10 years or so, and other intelligent devices that help us to avoid some of these outages that we would have experienced before. So the smart meters as well as the smart devices. So a smart device may be like if a palm tree hits a line, maybe 20 years ago, that all of the homes or businesses impacted by that outage would have been out for probably a couple of hours as we had to send a truck and diagnose the problem and so forth. Now, today, a palm tree can hit a line and you may see a flicker, right? Because the power may get diverted from another area and you would not even really notice that the power had gone out. So all of these advances are as a result of our investment in technology that's helped us to avoid, as we showed on the previous slide, about 800,000 unnecessary outages. Next slide. In addition to that, we are deploying drones as a part of our arsenal here to attack these storms. And drones are used on blue sky days, certainly, but even on storms, after a storm, if you think maybe 20, 30 years ago, after a storm, you have trees and vegetation all over the place. We would have to send out a crew to kind of drive, what we would say back in the day, walk the line, and then obviously drive the line with trucks at some point to make sure that the infrastructure is safe before we turn the lights back on or the power back on. And then sometimes when you're driving the line or walking the line, you would have a tree on the ground. So you have to call a vegetation crew, right? They have to come in and remove the trees so that this crew can continue to navigate that. Now we've done away with all of that. We're in the process of doing away with all of that. In Broward County, over the next several months to a year, we will have deployed drones strategically throughout the county that can be used to walk these lines aerially, so that now what would take probably a couple of hours just a few years ago will now take literally a few minutes for us to make sure that it's safe to turn that power back on. So all this goes to help us turn the lights back on, not just for your family, but certainly for your business as well. Next slide. And we operate a lot of this from our command center. Just shows that we do have a command center that we is our centralized, almost like our internal emergency or internal EOC, emergency operation center up in Palm Beach County. Brand new building, it can withstand a Cat 5. It's really been effective in helping us to consolidate some of our response mechanisms. The next slide shows that as we navigate post-storm, actually really prior to storm season, we sit down with all of our counties individually, and they identify what they determine to be critical infrastructure that these will come online. We'd have to attack these first, right? Make sure that if it's hospitals or 911 centers, or a lot of times the lift pumps, water stations, right, to pump water out or to keep water flowing in your homes and businesses. These things are generally identified as critical infrastructure. So as we go about restoring power, those are certainly taking a priority. Next slide. So I don't have all of the items. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of discussion that has been had in terms of storm preparation. I'll just point you to fpl.com/storm so you can get more information that we have also available. The next slide shows you what that website looks like, and it will it's an entry portal into what storm preparation opportunities that you should probably consider as you navigate looking into June 1st, right around the corner. The slide after that shows that we have a similar contact portal for our governmental partners, and that is a way for us to seamlessly connect with our government partners to ensure that communication is robust even during the most difficult times. The next slide shows that there are many ways for all of our customers to keep in contact with us. One thing I always stress is the app. Get the app, iPhone, Android, whatever it may be. The app is your friend in blue sky days, and certainly leading up to and after a storm, you're going to get the best information through that app. And we have other ways there that you can reach out to us as well. This next slide, I definitely want to spend just a few seconds on here, and it shows you how we prioritize getting customers back online, right? So, one of the first things we do is we make sure that the power plant is operational, and we generally don't have an issue with power plants, gratefully. The next thing is this transmission structure, this transmission power lines, right? We want to make sure that these major pieces of infrastructure have been not compromised, and they generally have operated well. We have not, I can't remember the last time I heard of a transmission pole or structure having any significant issues. So those are generally going to be knocked out addressed pretty quickly after a storm. And then we get into our substations, where after that, we highlight the critical infrastructure that I mentioned before based on the county's list, as well as getting the most people on at the earliest opportunity, right? So our priority is to get the most people back online as quickly as possible. So if you're in a living or your business is in a high density area, we're probably going to address those before a business or home that is in a more sparsely populated area, just because we want to get as many people back online as quickly as possible. And I hope that makes sense to everyone. So we're wrapping up here. So the next slide, it just shows you that about 4 days before landfall, we are deploying assets, both human resources as well as actual, assets that we're going to deploy in the field, whether it's transformers or wires or whatever the case may be. So these things are strategically placed throughout the area that will receive the impact, so that we're able to hit the road and start our restorations efforts as soon as the storm passes and it is safe to do so. The next slide shows that, we have staging sites all over. We have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be deployed. It is a huge logistical effort, and I give kudos to all of those people that actually are boots on the ground during those times. Our next slide shows that, our commitment is to work 24 hours until all of our customers are restored. And, as an example, I had an opportunity to go out and serve our community in Fort Myers after the storm. One of the storms hit there. I want to say it was Ian 2 years ago or so. And I met a crew. They were a crew from out of town, from Delaware or somewhere up there in the Northeast. And this was 3 or 4 days after the storm. They got the call. They were there within 24 hours. And at that time I met them, they had not yet gotten a hotel room or anything like that. They were literally just working, taking naps in the car, working around the clock to try and get our power restored. So, I just want to give a shout out to all of our line workers that do all that they can do to make sure that your businesses and your homes get power restored as quickly as possible. And I think that concludes my presentation. I don't know if we're taking questions. I did see a question about undergrounding, and as we underground throughout the community, that is something that will be, I wouldn't be able to tell you based on the address that was given to me if we're able to do that right now, but certainly as we go through the process, the local communities are alerted about a year in advance or so before that project starts in that area.
Mr. English, we want to thank you for sharing that information, and without question, thank you, and thank FPL for all that you actually do, as you said, pre, during, and post the storm. And again, we certainly recognize here at Broward that we've been fortunate, but we also are blessed to have you guys here and working so closely with us. So thank you, and FPL again. Next up, unless there's some changes, guys, the gentleman who has known me now for 12 years, he's known me since I got here this month, 12 years ago. Rafael Cruz, on behalf of Florida SBDC at FAU. Rafael, take it away. And again, thank you, sir, for always participating.
No problem, Sandy. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you good over here. We hear you.
All right. So actually, this is great. Next slide, please. FPL, the great work they do. I lived through Andrew and every other storm since then, so I know the work that FPL is doing is critical for businesses. Next slide, please. Right, the Small Business Development Center is a program of the SBA, which is a Small Business Administration. Right, that's the federal government. Okay, and we're having a representative of the SBA speaking later, so I won't get into too much of that. So next slide there. Okay, some of these questions were asked before. Okay, can your business survive an impact? Right, the man-made disasters and natural disasters, those are two types. Right, so in the continuity discussion, okay, that our colleague already mentioned, right, she gave you basic steps. All right, so I'm not going to go over those, okay, or the information that you already have. All right, but suffice it to say, if you're on this call, if you're on this webinar, okay, you're at least thinking about this, right? You're at least thinking about this. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, this is what I want to focus on. All right, is it good to have a continuity plan? Is it good to have a plan at all? Yes, because of all the things that we just discussed. But from the business side of things, this continuity plan actually becomes a competitive advantage. How do we make it into a competitive advantage in business? Okay. If you're letting your customers know that you're prepared for a storm and you're communicating with them well after that storm, that puts you in a different place than your competitors that did not prepare and are not communicating. So that is a competitive advantage. If you go after contracts at any level, whether it's city, county, or federal government, state government contracts, right? And you'll be able to honestly say that you are prepared for storms, you have communication plans in place, you have heat, okay, resistance, and water resistant. Okay, you have cybersecurity up in place, right? That puts your bid in a different position. It gives it a competitive advantage as compared to other bids, right? So this does make a difference in what we feel. We don't know, but what we feel is going to happen in the future is that more and more folks that are putting out RFPs and putting out contracts are going to require that you answer specific questions as to how you're prepared for, okay, disasters, right? So the first questions you want to ask, and again, some of this was covered, but it's important that you understand how long can you go without critical functions, right? So what is critical, what's important, what's non-essential? And you need to focus on the critical and the important. And how long can you go? Try to group it into 0 to 24 hours, 24 to 48, 48 to 72. Okay, next slide. Besides critical functions, okay, what we do is critical records, right? So what are the records? What's the data that you need to perform the jobs that you need to perform, right? Have multiple copies in different formats. Okay, if you need to have some in hard copy, you do that, but you also store copies on site and off site, okay, in the cloud, right? The other thing is you can purchase external drives where you can download once a week, or especially before a storm, critical data onto a military grade, okay, external memory that's waterproof. And you put that in a Ziploc baggie and there you go. Okay, and now you have your records with you, right? Wherever you need to go, right? Regularly back up vital records, especially customer information, customer data, right? And then test your backup systems and make sure that they are working, right? One of the things that you want to do is, and you should do this annually, especially if you have inventory, okay, you have multiple locations with inventory, things like this, right? Go through, take pictures and or video of inventory, furnishings, fixtures, equipment, all these kind of things, right? So that you have proof, okay, that they were there where you say they were, okay? Now, in terms of your data and your cybersecurity, right? You want to make sure, right, that you have antivirus software and a firewall so it's not easy to get to your data, right? And establish office policies in terms of how you store your data, okay? And how you access the data, right? Some people, believe it or not, well, because we have so many passwords now, they write them on a little sticky and they put it on the computer, okay? Yeah, we know that we're not supposed to do that, but a lot of people do it, especially when you have to keep changing your password. We don't want that to happen, okay? So introduce them to a password storage thing, right? Can you go back to that last slide, please? Thank you. Okay, so for more tips on computer emergency readiness, there's a website there, the uscert.gov. Okay, next slide. Now, 5 simple steps for recovery. Okay, document the damage, and this is where that assessment, okay, that survey that Sandy was talking about, that is critically important because big decisions are made based on that survey information. If a storm passes through and it appears to the powers that be that not that much damage happened because nobody's filling out the survey and letting them know that the damage happened, they will deploy resources to a different area of the state. All right. So that survey is us letting people know, okay, that we need the help. And this is actually what happened. So as soon as you can and you have access to it, fill out that survey. It is very important. It is very important for us to get the proper resources into our area. Can you go back to the previous slide, please? I think these are moving automatically. The next thing you want to do is make sure you call your insurance agent. Okay. Now, we suggest that you call your insurance agent a couple of days before an event. If we know a hurricane is coming or something like that, call your insurance agent because it may be very difficult to get to them afterwards, right? So you want to set up some kind of situation where you say, listen, I'm going to call you, from at 3 o'clock and at 6 o'clock every day after the storm until I reach you, right? So you have some kind of contact, you have some kind of prep, and if they need you to do anything before the storm, right? There's always before, during, and after, right? If you have to, file an extension, okay, for your taxes, if that's applicable, right? At all costs, avoid contractor fraud. We have people that take advantage or try to take advantage of our communities when there is a disaster. So post-disaster, they come in and promise you the lowest price that you've ever heard of to fix your roof, and that's because they're not going to fix it, right? So avoid those things, okay? And critically important is to make sure that you have a clear, and this was spoken about earlier, but you have a clear communication with your employees, your team, and your customers. The sooner you let your customers know that you are in fact in business and that they can avail themselves of your resources or your products, okay, that helps them to recover, okay? So we want to make sure that your customers know that you are in fact in business and that you can help them out through your services and your products, right? Next slide, please. Now, there are resources that get deployed when we have a disaster, okay? One of them is the Florida Bridge Loan, right? This is triggered by an event, okay? And the governor of the state is the one that opens this program up, right? So the best place you'll find this information out is through actually the county's website is fantastic. FPL's website is fantastic. The websites that have been shared with you can help you get a plan together, can help you communicate before, during, and after. So make sure that you log onto those websites that are in the chat, all right, and save them in your memory so that way you don't have to remember them later. All right. Now, this is a loan. It's not a grant. So this has to be repaid. And what it is a bridge loan. It's a small amount of money. Okay. That's less than $100,000. Okay. Go back, please. That's less than $100,000, right? The bridge loan. And what it does, it gets you from the point of post-disaster, right, to the point that your insurance or some other funding comes into place. All right. So that's what the bridge loan is. Okay. So again, that is a state program, and it's to help small businesses bridge the gap, Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, now we have the SBA disaster assistance, right? Now the SBA doesn't normally, and we're going to have a representative of the SBA talking, so I'm just going to go over this briefly, okay? But generally, the SBA does not give direct loans. They work with our partners in the banking community to provide those loan guarantees to the banks to provide your small business a loan. But during a disaster, the SBA makes direct loans, and they make those loans, okay, based on two things, okay? Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, just like any loan thing, you want to have a relatively good credit history, okay? And you have to demonstrate the ability to repay, all right? And if there's any collateral, and they'll get into that later, but then you have to pledge some of that collateral if it's available, right? Next slide, please. Now, this is the key thing from a small business standpoint. You as a small business owner need to think about, right? There are two types of damage that could happen. Okay, there's physical damage that you see there. That's something that storm comes through or a flood comes through and you get physical damage. The walls get mold, the roof comes off. There is physical damage, all right? So there's a loan to cover that type of damage. And then there's another type of damage that we call economic injury, okay? And this, the biggest example that we've had recently was a pandemic, right? The pandemic caused a lot of economic injury, but it didn't cause any physical damage. Nobody's roof was blown off by the pandemic, but people had to close their businesses because of the pandemic, and they lost money. Economic injury. You lose money because of something that happened, economic injury. So always remember that you could have a physical damage and you can have economic injury, and they're two different things, okay? They're two different things that you want to be cognizant of, right? So that's why we want to make this clear to you, okay? Think about these things before you need to do them, all right? So if we have physical damage, what could we get physical damage from? And if we have economic injury, where might that be if we have to close because we closed one of our offices or one of our locations and we couldn't close and we had to keep the other ones open, right? So that may reflect your economic injury, right? These are some basic resources. The Florida SBDC is there, okay? And that's us. And we work with small businesses to help them develop these plans, okay, and to guide them. Please go back to the last slide. to help them. We work with small business to help them develop these plans, okay, and to put them in contact with some of the resources that have been discussed already. All right. The Florida Bridge Loan is there, Florida Damage Assessment Survey. Okay, that's the website for it, at least the last one that we had, and the SBA disaster loans. That's the bridge loan that we talked about. Okay. Now, the next two presenters, if you own a business, pay very close attention to the next presenters because they're going to be giving you resources specifically for small businesses before, during, and after storms. Okay. Thank you very much, Sandy. As it's always a pleasure. And here is our website for the SBDC that serves our region. That's sbdc.fau.edu. And you can get on our website and sign up for one-on-one consultation that's confidential. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Rafael, thank you for that information, and thank you again for always sharing and those vital key points about the damage assessment survey, about preparing for the loan, about submitting your information, about doing it all timely. Guys, we need to make sure that that's really happening. But as Rafael ended, he was telling you these next few speakers is really going to dive in on things that can aid you as a business, even as public. Having a better understanding of the different opportunities that's available to business will certainly support us all. So with that, we're going to get going with our partner for CareerSource, Broward. Hey, Doug, take it away. Thank you for joining us again this year, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Sandy. And welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. Just to make sure, sound check, can you hear me? Is it loud enough?
We hear you, sir. I hear you.
Okay, great. So today I want to focus on how the different resources that we can present to both business and individuals who are actually your employees, because as different of the speakers have said prior to my coming on here, this impacts both business and families. So everyone gets impacted during any kind of a disaster. So go ahead, next slide, please. Quick overview. If you don't know who we are, this will kind of tell you, I'm going to combine those two into one statement. We connect business with talent. And then we help that business and that individual get the training they need either to retain their job or to move up. Next slide, please. So how do we do that? We do that in a number of ways. Everywhere from the beginning of that recruitment process, posting your job on Employee Florida, all the way to the end, which is kind of an outplacement. And that's one of the things we'll key in on. One of the things I'll mention here just as a kind of a shout out, because it's becoming an increasingly important tool when you're looking to recruit or you're looking to build your talent pipeline, is apprenticeships. And they're growing. There's a lot of emphasis on them because it's one way to secure talent, to retain talent, and really to help build strong skill sets. And they're in every kind of industry. So, but in this one, we're going to be focusing on the outplacement side of things. I will do a shout out to the box on your bottom right, financial assistance for employee training. That's one way you as a business can actually improve your bottom line because we can offset training costs for you. Okay, next slide, please. Great, thank you. So one of the things we do offer is all kinds of economic and labor market data. You can actually go to our website, find information on the economics of not only Broward County, but the Tri-County Southeast Florida area. Good for helping you make decisions. I mentioned the HR recruitment information we can help you with and the training programs. Next slide. And we have these 4 work-based training programs. On-the-job training, which is to hire someone into a position. That's actually a wage reimbursement program. The incumbent worker training program, that is an upskilling for current employees in a phenomenal way. Again, to upskill, remain competitive, avoid layoffs, perhaps if that's the case, and just keep your workforce kind of tuned and ready to go. And then, of course, we do offer paid internships and the Summer Youth Employment Program. We're actually still looking for businesses to place summer youth in. Great way to prepare tomorrow's workforce today. And it's kind of cliche-ish, but it is true. These are juniors and seniors in high school. So it's a good way to introduce them to different industries and to different occupations. Next slide, please. Okay, so outplacement services. Go ahead and move forward. Beg your pardon. Having a bit of a postnasal drip here. Okay, the first one is reemployment assistance. Okay, so what happens during times of disaster? Now, this could be, by the way, and it's been mentioned here before, your natural disasters, your hurricanes, tornadoes, things like that. But also don't think in today's world, unfortunately, there could be the non-physical damage disasters. Ralph mentioned COVID. But think of perhaps at some point somewhere in the world a terrorist attack happens. And maybe it shuts down supply lines. All of a sudden your business is impacted negatively. Now what? Okay, so if you ever need to lay off, or even if you don't, you're not big enough, a WARN notice is something that businesses with at least 100 employees have to notify the state to say, hey, we're doing a layoff here. If you're a small business, you need to lay some people off. Give us a call. We can actually go out or virtually help your employees understand some of their options and what comes next for them. So it's a good way, again, to prepare your workforce. We do recommend never do the surprise, hey, you don't have a job today. Avoid that, kind of brace your employees, and it'll build, it'll help you build some goodwill and rapport for down the road when you'll need it. I'll get into that a little later. Next slide. Okay, this is a program the state has, and it's funded through the unemployment compensation program. This is a nice way. It's totally voluntary. If you are interested in participating, you can actually go online with the state, set up a plan. And I recommend something like this to be prepared prior to the hurricane season, but then it'll also apply again to any kind of disaster that might hit, whether it's physical or natural or man-made. So what happens? So in the situation where you're thinking, you know what, I just can't keep these people running full time. I need to pull back some because of what's happened. Okay. So you can actually reduce your employees, at least depending on the size of the business, anywhere from 10% to 40% of their hours. Okay. You can reduce. And what happens is the state comes in and uses the reemployment assistance to offset the difference in the hours. So it allows you to kind of save on your money to keep your cash flow going. And then the individuals will get the difference from the state as part of their reemployment assistance program. Okay. And the goal here is to avoid laying off employees. That's the driver here. And this, something like this can be very useful. I'll tell you what, as many of you may have experienced even during all the lockdowns that came with COVID. A lot of times businesses were it was more reactionary. Oh, gotta lay everybody off. Bye. You know, everyone's gone. And, you know, the impact of that, the sting is still being felt in many industries because people, when things turned around, opened up, businesses were calling people back and the people were saying, you know what? No, thank you. and then that was the end of it. Interestingly, I spoke with a general manager of a hotel. It was another state actually, but we had met at a conference. And he said, I asked him how he did with his rehiring and how he was doing with the staff. He said, you know what? We had no problems. We lost one person. And the reason was they prepared staff for it. They kept in touch regularly and they showed a real interest in what was going on. And so this kind of thing where you're avoiding just laying folks off, try to buffer that some, let the reemployment assistance, the short-time compensation program make up for it, can really help build goodwill with your employees. Okay, next slide. Beg your pardon. Okay, so this I'd mentioned it's good for about 1 year. Your short-time compensation plan, and it's all built online. You do it right there. The state is notified, and then when you think you're going to need to kick it in, you notify the state, and then they start working their end of things. Now the individuals that are working for you do apply because it is a type of unemployment assistance. That's just a small percentage of their total, but they do apply. So they would fill something out too. Next slide. Now, how's this going to benefit as a business? How's it going to benefit you? Well, in different ways. One, you build that goodwill. When it's time for you to start calling people back or rehiring, you already got them there. You never fully laid them off. But even if you have to ease into maybe a deeper cuts. That goodwill will help you come back again. Now, if you're on the short-time compensation program, the benefit to you is as things say that supply chain opens up again, or the repairs are done, FPL has put everyone back on the electric power, and everything's working well. Well, you don't have to sit there and say, gee, I laid everybody off. Now I got to recruit, I got to interview, I got to hire, got to train people. No, you avoid all that. You already have them there on some reduced hours. Now you can start bringing them back on to increased hours to full time. So it saves you really time and money, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. I went through different parts of this. I'll go ahead and skip this slide. If you can move forward, please. Okay. I mentioned here on that second bullet, you'll see the employees will either get this through EFT payment card or debit card. They get that portion of their pay. Of course, you as a business will continue to pay them your portion. Next slide, please. Okay, what about the job seekers? Okay, and again, here's another time where whether you have to lay them off or not lay them off, you have to reduce their hours, or even if you need to prepare for a larger layoff. Sometimes that happens. It can't be avoided. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some of the things that you can help them prepare for. Again, build goodwill, build the likelihood, increase the likelihood that you're going to be able to call them back and they're going to come willingly. We can actually go on site to your business, or we can do it virtually, whichever is easier for you, and let your employees know, okay, here are various opportunities that you can take advantage of. Services that we provide, that they might be services that other providers make available to them. And we review these so they kind of get a feel for, okay, what can we do? The reemployment assistance program, if it's going to be a complete layoff, we can explain that to them, because this is no longer, you can't walk into an unemployment office anymore. They don't exist. It's all online. So we can explain how that's going to work for them and who they'll need to contact and so forth. If it's Florida Kid Care, families come in all shapes and sizes. If you have parents that just have struggled financially, or maybe a single parent, Florida Kid Care is an insurance that can help cover the cost of children's medical. So these kind of things can be a huge help during a layoff. Credit counseling, 211, if there's any kind of a real need for advice, counseling, and that kind of assistance. Next slide, please. We can go over all aspects of, we can instruct folks on all aspects of the reemployment assistance. Okay, if they get a severance, usually that depends on the size of the business. Larger companies have those kind of packages, but how will that affect any unemployment, I keep saying unemployment, reemployment assistance. And like I mentioned there's no local unemployment office, so it's good to get all this information up front to kind of know what to expect, so no one walks away from their last day on your job with them thinking, oh, I'll just go to the unemployment office, because there is none. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we can tell them how to navigate through what to expect if they come into one of our centers. We have 3 centers in the county: Hollywood, Oakland Park, and Coconut Creek. We're there to help folks kind of get back into the workforce. That's our job, reemployment. We want them to get that next job as quickly as possible. So what to expect when they walk in. There might be possible training opportunities available for them if they need to upskill in some way. Sometimes it's particularly if someone's been employed for so long. One of the first questions is, how do I do a resume? If they haven't needed one for 10, 15, 20 years, now what? So they can really get back into the groove, learn what they should be incorporate, what they should leave out. And maybe it's a skill set issue. Maybe they've got good skills, but it's like, gee, you know what? I need to know this program, maybe. So there might be opportunities for us to be able to help them get some of that extra skill set building, and then they can go back and find the next job. So we have workshops available on a number of issues. We have what I call just general workshops, as you see here: social networking, virtual and in-person interviewing. We also have, though, professional placement network workshops, and those are geared toward professionals. And you can go on our website at CareerSourceBroward.com, find out a little bit more. Those are tailored to folks who've been in managerial positions, for at least 5 years, and kind of it's a different approach they take when it comes to looking for work. Then some people might need to know, okay, how do I set up an email, LinkedIn account? I never did this before. I've been working for too long. So that's other ways that we can assist them in getting back into the groove. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, look at this. We're all over the place, all over the map. And if you go to the final slide, you'll find, I believe they're also posting our contact info in the chat, I think. Oh, I had an extra one there. So one more slide forward and you'll find my name and information. Yes, there it is. Okay. You'll see my number down there, my address. I think they also posted in the chat. But you can certainly reach out to me. Be more than happy to assist with anything, any questions or about any of our services, but particularly about the short-time compensation or just kind of starting over if you need to look for talent after a disaster. So I want to thank you very much. Thank you, Sandy.
Doug, thank you, and thanks for bringing that information. And guys, in short for Doug, if you want to know about the access and the dollars and how you can get assistance with your employees pre, post, during a storm, but even outside a storm, that's CareerSource Broward. Definitely circle back and get with them. But now let's transition to Ms. Fernandez and the Small Business Administration. Thanks for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having us. And we've really had a lot of great information, during this webinar. And so my name is Alyn Fernandez. I'm with the Outreach and Marketing Specialist team here in South Florida. I've been with the SBA, actually. My anniversary is coming up now, 5 years. Worn a lot of different hats, whether it was capital access during the COVID days or business opportunity specialist with our 8A team. And so, all of this information, honestly, that we're bringing to you is extremely important. There is some overlap in what I'm going to discuss. I'm going to make it brief, but I do, if there's anything that I want you to take away from this, is really, being prepared and get connected. You have some amazing resources here at your fingertips, and we're here to help you get you through, any situation. Next slide, please. And so when we talk about preparedness, it's really the state of being able to respond effectively when an emergency or something unexpected, comes up. It involves planning, right? And so organizing your resources, like I mentioned, and taking action, before a crisis occurs, really to reduce risk, protect lives, your property, and ensure a quicker recovery. And preparedness is essentially means being ready. Mentally, physically, and practically for whatever potentially could happen. Next slide. And so why is planning important, and why are we bringing this information to you? And so FEMA has stats that 40% of businesses do not reopen after a disaster. 25% of them fail within a year of a disaster. And us here at the SBA, we know that 90% of the small businesses fail within 2 years of being struck by a disaster. So preparedness builds resiliency. When families, individuals, communities are prepared through planning, training, having the right resources, they recover quicker, and they're more effective after a crisis. And so the outcome of resiliency is good preparedness. You can withstand any storm, and adapt. And so that's only possible if you're prepared. Next slide, please. And so I think Rafael was the one that kind of mentioned a little bit on when it comes to businesses and why it's important. And we had another colleague that talked about business continuity plan. And so really all these things make you kind of think about why it's important. You know, there are hidden costs to your business, you know, loss of volume, vendors maybe not being able to get the supplies that you need to open your doors. Sometimes the cost of materials increase. So there is an interruption of cash flow. And Rafael also mentioned this from the SBDC. And so when we talk about interruption of cash flow, that's the economic injury disaster loan that you can potentially apply for. And so, you know, that is what the SBA, you know, comes to offer. And so go ahead, top to that next slide. And so today we're really talking about more the different types of disaster. Well, we're talking about hurricanes specifically because, you know, in Florida is not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. So really, you know, just kind of being prepared for that. But, you know, there's other things besides natural disasters that were mentioned, you know, a couple years back, you know, we had a public health emergency. You know, there's also cybersecurity, there's rainstorms. So sometimes it's not an actual, you know, hurricane, but, you know, there's floods that we heard of earlier in these presentations. And so the goal is really to minimize the harm and to respond confidently whenever a situations arise, being resilient and really being ready. Next slide, please. And so when we talk about before the storm, we talk about action, right? Next slide, being prepared. And so there's a couple of resources. Oh no, go ahead. One more slide back. We're talking about before the storm. And I've added a couple of resources here as well. You know, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. It's really tips on how to create your own continuity plan. We have so many great resources at our fingertips here that we've heard from as well. And really putting together that plan. So, you know, when communities, when they prepare and they're proactive, you know, securing your home, setting up, you know, setting up in shelters, creating these community communication plans, there's less damage and we recover faster. And in ready.gov also, there's templates on how to make this plan. So go ahead to the next slide. So after a storm, and these are kind of a takeaways, and you will be getting this slide, you know, you talk about registering for FEMA. You know, in our SBA.gov, actually, sometimes even mostly in our homepage, there tends to be a big slide across the top where it talks about, you know, register here, or, you know, SBA disaster, or you can go to SBA.gov/disaster. And there you'll find tons of information as well after the storm that talk about our recovery centers, where we are on the ground, where you can come and fill out your application with us, depending on, you know, what county you're in. We tend to be in the more severe, you know, counties on the ground. But also, you know, knowing that, you know, you heard from some of our resource partners, our SBDCs at FAU, from Rafael, and, you know, our partners are here to help you, as well as we here at the SBA are here to help you. We tend to put webinars post you know, disasters, where we will talk about, you know, what you need to apply, what are some of the paperwork, some tips, you know. So I invite you to, you know, sign up with us, you know, and you know, come check us out in some of our webinars. Sometimes we do it with our resource partners, sometimes we do it as a standalone. You know, all of our local offices, whether it's us in South Florida or North Florida, you know, we put together these webinars. And so it's not only for businesses, as Rafael had mentioned, there are, you know, physical loans, right? So the physical structure for homeowners, as well as for businesses. And then there's also those idle loans, the economic injury disaster loans, when we talk about, you know, businesses and how that's affecting your income and really that working capital and those opportunities. And so, you know, if there's any takeaway, next slide, you know, we have our resource partners, we have our local assistants, the SBA is also here to help you. You have tons of resources here that we've heard from today. And so the last slide has some contact information. I don't know if you're able to get to that next slide. There you go. That talks about our different websites. And then one more slide after that, next slide, is connecting with us. I talked to you about, we have tons of resources on how to get ready, when to get, you know, before the storm, after the storm, you know, the tips on all those different loan products that I told you about. We get more in depth. You know, I didn't want to overwhelm you all because there's a lot to kind of consider, but really the most important takeaway now is get ready, put together your plan. So when the time comes, you're resilient and you can open your doors quickly to your small businesses. And then last slide is my contact information, you know, again, here to support, you know, our small businesses any which way that we can. So thank you so much for this time. And I hand the floor back to you all in Broward.
Ms. Fernandez, thank you, and thanks for sharing that information. If you're anywhere near my friend, be sure to tell Althea I said hello.
I shall.
Yeah. And guys, we did get a communication on behalf of Miss Perry. She's called to another meeting, so she's unable to join us. But this is time for all of us and the speakers, and we're here for you. If you had questions, we hopefully that you put them in the Q&A. If some somehow got caught in the chat and should have been in the Q&A, staff will take a look at those as well. But we do want to entertain, we have time, questions if you guys have any. And again, this presentation, our outreach team will let you know when it's posted, but it eventually will be posted on our YouTube channel. And we'll certainly make that information or share that information in our weekly newsletter, through other social media, because as we prepare, far beyond today and those of you who joined us today, and thank you if you took the time to join us today, we need this information to get out to everyone. So again, that's why this session was also recorded and it will be posted. So staff, tell me what we're working with, if there's any questions for myself or for any other speakers who are still with us.
Good morning, Mr. McDonald. The first question in the Q&A is, should a business start learning or leaning into the wind at the 96th hour to impact and start activating their emergency plans?
Which one of my experts want to take that? I'll certainly chime in if necessary. So none of my experts want to take that. So guys, and as a part of your continuity plan, as a part of your planning, as a part of making sure your business is good, as a part of making sure your family is good, you also heard we too get our information from the Weather Center. And we then share the information as we actually get it. Your question about the 96 hours leaning in, I would say professionally is a good window. But I would also pay attention to the information that's being disseminated within those 5 days leaning into any future activity. But I think you're certainly within where you need to be with the 96.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Our next question, which was in the chat, are you able to provide information for businesses to sign onto FEMA for business opportunities?
Good question. So from a county perspective, and I'm trying to say this properly and slowly, and not knowing the next steps of the national FEMA, stay in tune with all Broward County procurement, because all Broward County procurement, even to date, based on things you may have heard, that will potentially be seeking reimbursement back from FEMA, that's a certain solicitation, and other procurements that actually takes place from Broward County to support our needs, that's solicitation that we dabble in. But I also believe it would not hurt if you still went to the state, or more importantly, the federal website for FEMA and search under procurement opportunities, because in the end, their procurement website is totally different than mine. Whether I'm doing activities expecting to get reimbursed by FEMA or not, or whether I'm just doing the procurement that the county needs to make sure we meet all of our obligations, that's my procurement aspect. If ever we're informed that FEMA is doing something on a national level, on the state level in this regard, we'll post that as well. But that's always going to be a different website or what is known as a different bid platform. So in short, any procurement, including FEMA, relevant to Broward, stay in touch with us in Broward County's platform, which is BPro. That's where all of our bids come out. But it certainly wouldn't hurt even if you Googled FEMA procurement and then research opportunities for bids to also identify A, what's their bid platform, and B, make sure that you're registered directly. Next.
That's all the questions we have for now. Q&A is still open.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for joining us today. Thank you for all of my speakers, all of my presenters. Thank you. I can't do it without you. Want to make sure that you know that as a county, we appreciate you supporting us each year. Guys, on the screen right now is all the contact information for our office. Again, this entire presentation will be put up so that you can have access to the information and the contact information for each of the speakers as well. But for today, thank you, speakers. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to staff who kept us going and navigating this process. And with that, we'll prepare to close out. There's some more slides about the micro grant. I think there was a slide, if I didn't miss the one about survey. So we'll slowly close the slides out, but we definitely want to make sure if you have a chance, you can register to get our Wednesday night newsletter. If you are a small business here in Broward, make sure you know about the second rollout of the micro grant pilot program, $2,500 grant that we're trying to give to some of our smallest of small businesses. That'll also not only be on the website, but you can go to our website. I'm sorry, it's not only be a part of the presentation, but you can go to our website directly, broward.org/econdev, and get more of that information, or you can scan me as it has on that actual screen. So guys, we're going to close out now, but those slides will still be around. Hey, Fitzy, international activity. If you want to know more about exporting, you want to meet at least 70 different countries, you want to know how we prepare our businesses to do more, since 95% of all the procurement in the world is outside of the US, we want to make sure you understand what's happening and how you can get engaged. So with that, we thank you again for joining us. And seriously, any other questions, you think of something tomorrow or next week, definitely email the office. You have our information. Thank you. Have a great day, guys. And thank you again to all the speakers, all the presenters.
Thank you. Have a good one.